evening, everybody, and welcome to Dialogue. I am here this evening with Alanna Rogers, who is one of the co-founders of Hands for Hunger, a new, really fantastic not-for-profit organization that has been established here in the Bahamas. And we're also coming to you from the beautiful spot here of Goodfellow Farms, out west in Mount Pleasant. So if you get a chance, you gotta come out here and have a little lunch or look at their store. But Alanna, I wanted to talk to you to find out some more about this. I know you guys have a new organization. It started this year. Mm-hmm. Hands for Hunger. I mean, it sort of is implicit in there that you're doing something to help with the hungry people of our country.
Right.
But give me more details. What's the objective of the program? What are you guys doing?
Well, basically, we're a newly formed nonprofit humanitarian organization, fully volunteer run.
Okay.
And we salvage fresh, high-quality food that would otherwise be thrown away from hotels, restaurants, bakeries, grocery stores, farms, and any other food service establishment, and then redistribute it to service agencies that have feeding programs.
Okay. So this would be the typical thing where you go to a buffet and you're sitting in the restaurant and you know that there's no way that everybody's going to be eating all this food. This is food that's untouched. Right. This isn't a half-eaten sort of taco from somebody. No. Exactly. This is fresh food that's just otherwise generally thrown out.
Right. Yeah, typically, in most cases, food service establishments, in terms of their customer policies, always want to have more food available than it's going to be needed.
Right.
On purpose, of course. And because of their exceptionally high standards with regards to what they can serve their customers, food normally has a very small shelf life.
Yeah.
And
good for us as customers, not so good when you think of the overall picture of food wastage. Okay.
Right. And just to give an indication, Atlantis, for example, on a daily basis, they discard 7 tons of food.
Wow.
And that's just one establishment alone, obviously a sizable one. But there's a lot of food to capture out there, and hunger is not a problem that's unsolvable. It's just about redistributing the resources more efficiently, so that's what we're trying to do.
And as people know on the show, I'm an economist, so this is what I deal with generally in my other jobs is exactly, in most cases there are sufficient resources, it's just that we are inefficiently allocating them. Exactly. So what you were doing, I think is brilliant. You were more effectively and efficiently allocating the food resources. I wanted to ask though, Bahamas is great. I do a lot of traveling. I just got back from 3 weeks in Central America, and when you're walking around there, if you're in Mexico City, if you're walking around in rural parts of Central America, you see the hunger on a daily basis. You see the people begging, you can see they're emaciated. Bahamians in general, you think about us, skinny isn't a term that applies to a whole bunch of us. Typically, especially being in healthcare, we think of the other side for Bahamians. We're overweight, we're obese, we have these issues of overindulging. Right. What is the problem with hunger here?
Okay. Well, first of all, somebody that's malnourished doesn't necessarily have to be emaciated.
Right.
So you can have somebody that physically from the outside looks like they're overweight, but they may not be healthy and well-nutritioned.
And this is the idea that they are eating only a very high-fat, probably high-protein diet, but they're not getting any of the balanced diet.
Right, vitamins, minerals, the whole grains, fruits and vegetables, that kind of thing. So that's the first thing.
Right.
Second of all, because we don't have an epidemic like Africa, again, people think hunger doesn't exist here.
Right.
That's a misconception. It does. It's definitely hidden in this community.
Yeah.
And just as in my opinion, a very striking indication of the level of hunger and how we tend to miscalculate it, the Bahamas government provides food aid in the form of a food assistance program and also the school lunch program. It's meant to be supplementary, and these figures I'm going to mention are also taken from 2004, so they're a few years outdated.
This is the IDB sponsored
study that was done. Right. But in any case, I think they're still pretty relevant. If you're supporting more than 4 people, the maximum amount of money you can get per month is $80.
Right.
They've concurrently also stated that the national poverty level is $280 a month.
Right.
So this means that at best, through government assistance, you can only meet 18% of your essential needs.
Right.
So the point is the extent and the coverage to which these programs are offered, it's not adequately sufficing, and the number of feeding programs that exist, they're minimally administered. They're not reaching the number of people that are in need of hunger, and it's not always somebody who's on the side of the road sleeping at the bus stop. It's a mother. She has 3 jobs. She has 4 kids she's supporting.
Yep.
And when she needs to make decisions about paying rent or paying her light bill and so on at the end of the week, one day of lunch gets cut out of the kids.
Or even more, which I mean I know, or equally problematic is when people, because they have to buy the food, they are unable to buy the books their children need. They're not able to buy shoes. They're not able to buy the other. They're not able to pay their BEC bill, and as a result, food really is actually knocking out the other basic essentials of life. They can't pay rent. They can't do this, so they are living in assisted shelters in these places.
Yeah, it's always a trade-off. Yeah. And I mean, even in the case of our agencies, most of them are set up not primarily as feeding programs. So they're set up as educational institutions, and they provide remedial services and counseling and health services and so on. And they end up paying so much money in terms of food acquisition costs that they really have little left over to channel into the actual reasons they're existing in the first place. So by supplementing their programs and hopefully enhancing them with more food, they're not only able to provide more meals, but also greater variety, and then ultimately a higher standard and quality of food with fruits and vegetables and whole grains and meats.
So, and actually this is a really important point, and we should get this across, is that because of doing this, as you said, I know you work with a lot of other groups, Salvation Army, Red Cross, there's religious groups, there's a whole variety. And as you said, their key function generally isn't the provision of food.
No.
And what they're doing is actually, it has the same level of importance because they're able to break the cycle of poverty by increasing education, increasing counseling. These are the sorts of things that are able to get a woman who has to work 3 menial jobs, take her to that next level. So now she actually only has to work 2, get paid that 20% more for them, and finally be able to get herself out of the cycle of poverty. So that's great. By you providing the food to these groups, they can allocate extra resources to doing these functions, which ends the problem as opposed to putting a Band-Aid over it, which is, or helps to end the problem, I should say.
We're hoping, yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I think poverty, obviously, as you would know, it's an extremely complex issue, and there's so many correlations, and it's so hard to sum up in a nutshell, but we know for sure that when someone's basic need, such as hunger, is not met, there's just no way you can ask kids in school to concentrate and to be active learners. It's impossible, and I think what often happens is, due to this lack of understanding regarding the basic hunger problem, we get frustrated and impatient with kids growing up in our society and not doing well in school, and we just attribute it to their own personal ability,
behavior, or whatever it is.
And then we're all saying, why can't they just meaningfully contribute to society and get it? When the first initial need is not met, how can you possibly ask them to focus on other intellectual issues?
And this is proven time and time again, and often these studies are done in countries with perhaps more significant or easily identifiable problems than the Bahamas, but it does make it easier to study, and this is malnourished children without any sort of exceptions to the rule perform poorly in school.
Definitely, yeah.
When you do not have your basic nutritional needs, it's also just about biochemistry and your actual body's ability to function beyond anything else. If you can't perform in school, you're not going to get the education you need to, again, to be able to assist your family to be raised out of poverty, and then you see this, it goes from generation to generation.
Exactly. I mean, it's also related to, like you said, behavioral issues. The hostil, you're irritable all the time because you don't have anything to eat, and then later on, at some point, that turns into hostility and anger,
and violence.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't think we can really discuss as a country issues like improving the education system and ameliorating our crime issues until some of these more basic needs are looked at more closely, in my opinion.